Well, hey, Converge community. It's good to not see you. Not really. No, I wish we could have saw you this morning. And I'm kind of frustrated with Zoom, and I'm sure you guys are frustrated by Zoom too. And, I'm thankful that this is all going to end soon. And we have some news about that at the end of this video, so stay tuned for that. But I wanted to kind of run this meeting just like we would normally. There just won't be anybody to talk to us on the call. So that's kind of sad. But we're going to do it this way. So I'm going to teach what I was going to teach, and it's going to feel a lot like we would have done this morning. It's not going to be Mitch preachy sermon stuff. It's going to be more conversation. Let's talk through this passage. And we're going to be looking at John 17. So if you don't have a Bible, you should grab one or pull it up on your browser right now.
Or your phone.
Or your phone. And but before we do that, I wanted to mention actually that this was going to be our 16th week meeting, if you can believe it. We'd be finishing up 4 months of meeting together this week. So I'm a little bummed we couldn't do that together. And nonetheless, though, we're still meeting, and hopefully you're catching this and sharing this with us right now. But I also wanted to recognize there were a lot of birthdays that happened this week, and there's a few more that are coming before we meet again all together. And so I wanted to recognize those. Some of you saw it or remember it. Nora last week, she turned 2 during the reveal party.
Yay, Nora!
Yep. And then Cherie, we won't say how old you turned, Cherie or Sarah or Kim this week, but they had birthdays as well. And upcoming, and we're going to talk more again about this, we won't meet via Zoom in a big group like this for a couple weeks. So I wanted to recognize some of the birthdays coming up. But Eric is having a birthday this week. Brenda's having a birthday this week. And then next week we have Abby and Andy and Mackenzie are going to have a birthday. And so happy birthday to all of you. And I hope you guys find ways to enjoy it, even though we can't do as much right now, and that kind of stinks. But nonetheless, here we go. So one of the things that I wanted to do was have a little time with our kids. We don't have any kids to look at right now. I wish we could look at their cute faces and hear their cute responses, but we don't have that.
You know, I can always pull up one of our screenshots and we can stare at you guys.
There you go. But I was going to do this. We're going to start by reading in John. Like I said, we're going to do 17, but I was going to start in 13 because what happens is in that night of the Last Supper, when Jesus is meeting with his friends, his disciples.
Wait, so you're talking to the kids right now, right?
No, I'm talking to the parents of why we're doing this, okay?
Oh, okay. I was going to tell the kids to lean in and listen.
Okay.
Sorry.
Well, the kids can still do that.
Okay, lean in and listen.
I'm telling the parents, this on the night of the Last Supper, Jesus actually has a lot of conversations with his friends, with his disciples. And John is one of the gospel accounts that really adds a lot of detail and color to what happens. And so John is actually the only one who records the feet washing part of the Last Supper night. And we get a bunch of these conversations. But early in the conversation, he says this in John 13. He says, and this is where I want you kids to listen. Jesus is saying this to his friends. He says, "So now I'm giving you a new commandment. Love each other just as I have loved you. You should love each other. Your love for one another will prove to the world that you are my disciples." And so what Jesus is saying here is he's telling everybody that they should love each other just like he loved them, and that by doing that, it will show everybody in the whole world how much we love Jesus. And it'll prove Jesus' love for us. And later on in John 17, we're going to read this together with your parents, but Jesus says to his dad, to God the Father, "I am in them and you are in me. May all of us experience, is what they're saying, such perfect unity that the world will know that you sent me and that you love them as much as you love me." And so Jesus is praying to his dad, God the Father, saying, will everybody who follows Jesus know God's love the way he knows God's love? And so what I was going to ask you kids is, what is something that somebody did for you this week or recently that you knew God loved you? What is a nice thing that somebody did. Maybe it was your parents, maybe it was a sister or a brother, maybe it was a grandparent. What did they do to show you how much that they loved you and how much Jesus loved you? Yep, nobody's there. So parents, what I want you to do is maybe hit pause here and ask them that question. I think it's a great conversation to have. And again, we're going to get at this, but if our call is to love each other, this new commandment, the way Jesus loved us, the sacrificial love, so that people know Jesus' love for us, then we should be exhibiting that ourselves. And we should also be looking at what are the ways we felt loved, which reflects Jesus' love, God's love for us this week. So go ahead and ask your kids that. If you don't have any kids, ask a kid, call somebody up you know, and it'd be a cool conversation to have with them, an excuse to connect with somebody.
Yeah, you can always call our kids. I mean,
that's true.
I don't know what they'll say.
They're always on their phones, so. All right, so that's what we were going to do with the kids, and actually we're going to answer that question later. We were going to in breakout rooms today. Unfortunately, we don't have breakout rooms, so what I want to encourage you is do it as a family, and potentially do it this week in your huddle. If you don't have a huddle, then you can call me and ask me that question, or I can ask you that question. How have you experienced God's love this week? It's a good opportunity to be grateful, and it's a good opportunity to reflect how much Jesus is a part of our life every minute and every day. So, with that said, we're going to look at John 17. And like I said, this is on the night of the Last Supper, and Jesus is having this celebration of the Passover, this religious holiday, with his close friends. And in the same way, last week we had a great celebration. We had the reveal party. It was so much fun, and I've been thinking about it all week, and I'd love to just hear some of your stories and reflections. Send me a quick note, call me, email me. I'd love to hear more about kind of what you thought of this week. But we had this great party last week, this great celebration, and we did that in place of our normal meeting. And you might even be thinking, well, that doesn't seem all that spiritual. It's fun. But I want to encourage you that actually celebration is very spiritual. We live holistic lives, and everything we do reflects and gives glory to Jesus, and that celebration, I believe, did that. But as we see later in this night where Jesus celebrated with his best friends, it led to this great prayer at the end of the night. And actually, after this prayer, they went to the Garden of Gethsemane where they prayed some more. So this celebration led to prayer, and we see that pattern often throughout scriptures. We see it in the Psalms. We see it all over. We even see after that, when Jesus fed 5,000, I'm sure there was a celebratory response to that. Jesus goes and prays immediately after. So my intention was this week to really focus on prayer and ground our church and our community in this prayer this week. And we were going to do that in the breakout rooms too. Unfortunately, we can't. So again, I want that to be part 2 of your assignment with your family, household, whoever's near, and both, maybe, your huddle. And if you don't have a huddle, you can come to the Thursday prayer meeting at 1 p.m. with Josh and Sarah. We put that.
You mean there's a Thursday prayer?
Yeah, there is.
What time is it
at 1 o'clock. Zoom, if it's still working.
How do I find the link?
If it's not, you can call Josh and Sarah. It's on the weekly emails.
Okay.
The link is always there, and it's the same link each time. So you can, if you can't find an email from this week, look last week. It'll be the same one. So I want us to spend this week really focused on prayer for our church, for our community, realizing this is exciting. We're all a part of this, an integral part of this. But until we give it over to Jesus and really trust him for what he's going to do with this community and ask him to do big things through this community, we know it won't be done. And we know it won't be done on our own capacity. So that's going to be the heart of this. And we're looking at Jesus' great prayer. It's called the Great Priestly Prayer by some at the end of that night. And I'm going to read it for you.
So where are you at again?
John 17. And so I'm reading from the New Living Translation, NLT. I happen to like that one. It's the same one, that big study Bible that they give out at the bridge. If you happen to have that one. If not, you can follow along. It'll be pretty close. So follow along with me, and let's read together John 17. After saying all these things, Jesus looked up to heaven and said, Father, the hour has come. Glorify your Son, so he can give glory back to you. For you have given him authority over everyone. He gives eternal life to each one you have given him. And this is the way to have eternal life, to know you, the only true God, and Jesus Christ, the one you sent to earth. I brought glory to you here on earth by completing the work you gave me to do. Now, Father, bring me into the glory we shared before the world began. So if you haven't caught on to this, Jesus is talking to his dad, God the Father. Go on to verse 6. I have revealed you to the ones you gave me from this world. They were always yours. You gave them to me, and they have kept your word. Now they know that everything I have is a gift from you. For I have passed on to them the message you gave me. They accepted it and know that I came from you, and they believe you sent me. My prayer is not for the world, but for those you have given me, because they belong to you. All who are mine belong to you, and you have given them to me, so they bring me glory. Now I am departing from the world. They are staying in this world, but I am coming to you. Holy Father, you have given me your name. Now protect them by the power of your name so that they will be united just as we are. During my time here, I protected them by the power of the name you gave me. I guarded them so that no one was lost, except the one headed for destruction, as the scriptures foretold. Now I'm coming to you. I told them many things while I was with them in this world, so that they would be filled with my joy. I have given them your word, and the world hates them because they do not belong to the world, just as I do not belong to the world. I'm not asking you to take them out of the world, but keep them safe from the evil one. They do not belong to this world any more than I do. Make them holy by your truth. Teach them your word, which is true. Just as you sent me into this world, I am sending them into the world, and I give myself as a holy sacrifice for them, so that they can be made holy by your truth. I am praying not only for these disciples, but also for all who will ever believe in me through their message. I pray that they will be all one, just as you and I are one. As you are in me, Father, I am in you, and may they be in us, so that the world will believe you sent me. I have given them the glory you gave me, so they may be the one as we are one. I am in them, and you are in me. May they experience such perfect unity that the world will know that you sent me, and that you love them as much as you love me. Father, I want these whom you have given me to be with me where I am. Then they can see all the glory you gave me because you loved me even before the world began. O righteous Father, the world doesn't know you, but I do, and these disciples know you sent me. I have revealed you to them, and I will continue to do so. Then your love for me will be in them, and I will be in them. So there's a lot happening in that passage. It's a long one, but it is such an important prayer that I think this is a great place to start as we're talking about prayer and we're focusing this week on prayer. And I want to just walk through some of the sections in here, and there's a lot there. We're not going to hit it all, but I'd encourage you to maybe read this again and think more about this. Maybe you could do that this week in your huddle if you're not sure what to do. And so I want to start there in the beginning. Again, I said Jesus, it's the end of that night, the last summer, and he's praying in the company of his disciples to his Father for his disciples, and then later for all believers that would come after his disciples. What I love about that is you and me are being prayed for by Jesus in this moment. And there are times when we look at Scripture and Jesus will make a statement about his disciples, specifically his 12, and we think, well, we're disciples too, so that's kind of about us. And that's true. I love this because this is actually about you. He's praying for those who will come to know the message. So that's really exciting, really powerful. And he's having this prayer right in front of him. So he's modeling this kind of prayer to his disciples as well. So he's teaching in the midst of this. He's having this intimate conversation with his Father about his unity with him and the experience his people are having. What I think is interesting in verse 9, he says, my prayer is not for the world, but for those you have given me. And he makes his distinctions between who's the world and who isn't the world. He says he's not. He says his followers aren't. Christians are not. And he's saying this is not for the world. So he's basically saying everybody who's not a part of the church, who's not a Jesus follower, is the world. And he's saying this is not for them. This prayer is not for them. And that might be striking, actually. It was to me to think, wow, Jesus is not praying this big missional prayer for the world. Now, we will see he does do that later on, and particularly after his resurrection. But I want you to notice that some of his final thoughts were for his people. And I want to tie that to that John 13 verse that we just read to the kids. And that ultimately the greatest expression of our faith and the greatest expression of our mission is loving one another really well by being an example to those far from Jesus, from those outside of the church. And I just wanted to point that out, that this is actually to his church and his church alone right now. And so we should take notice of this. We should listen to this. And he goes on to talk about, again, this difference, this the world and the not the world, and how he's part of that world, how we're a part of that world, but we're not the world. And he doesn't want to take us from the world either. He wants to keep us here, but he wants to protect us, which I think is really interesting. But what he's getting at, what he's asking for from the Father here is a protection piece. He's saying, I don't want to take them because I know that they're needed here. When he prays for the people that will follow, he's praying knowing that his disciples are going to be the ones that lead them there. So he knows he can't take them for the world, even though he wants them to come with them. He asks his Father to protect them. And in the same way, we have to anticipate that kind of, lack of safety in our own lives, that oppression, those types of things. And what's exciting here is knowing that Jesus is praying for the protection of the church. And that's one thing as a church that we need to be praying for. There's a lot of reasons that Satan doesn't want us to get on our feet.
On our Zoom calls.
Or on our Zoom call, that's true.
Sorry, I'm not blaming.
It might be Zoom.
You never
It's
know.
Satan, actually, yeah.
I'm not sure.
We need that protection as well. So that's a really important thing for us to be praying for each other, for our church, that we are protected, is in the same way that Jesus was praying this for his disciples. He says, now I'm coming to you. I told them many things while I was with them in this world so that they would be filled with my joy. Part of his prayer is for joy for his people. Right now, there's a lot of reasons to be sad, maybe depressed, maybe frustrated. I was frustrated this morning when I couldn't get on this call. And Jesus is praying that we experience joy, that we be filled with joy. He's literally praying for our joy. That's another area that we can be praying into. Would we each be experiencing joy as individuals, but as a community? I think one of the greatest reflections of the church is when people love being around each other and you can see the joy coming out of them. I know, Kenzie, you've expressed this when you were in college, how one of the things that you noticed about Christians is they were always happy. You didn't trust them or believe them, but...
No, before I knew Jesus, I would say, I think that they're all faking it. So, and I actually even said to one of my friends, I was like, I'm pretty sure that what I see you're always so happy. You're always so, I didn't use the word joy at that point, but you're always so happy. I know you're faking it. Life isn't like this. Right. So it definitely... And then there was other Christians that I never saw that joy, and those are the ones that I felt like, well, what you're saying you believe in is no different. I don't see it in your behavior. I don't see it in your attitude. You're just like me, so why would I want that?
Right. If there's no tangible joy coming out, what's the big appeal?
Yeah.
Other than that, fire insurance mentality, I just don't want to go to hell. People really want joy. And so it's really important, I think, and noticeable here that Jesus prays for his disciples, for all of us to be filled with joy immediately after talking about protection. Because if we have to be protected, there's an anticipation that it may not always be fun. And so Jesus is praying for joy here for all of us, and for particularly here for his disciples, but also for all of us. Because he goes in and talks about how the world hates them and they don't belong to the world. And ultimately it's because they chose Jesus. And that's so different than what the rest of the world is doing. He goes on to talk about how, in verse 18, just as you sent me into this world, I am sending them into the world. So here we see that missional charge. He's praying his prayer. He's praying that they're inwardly developed so that they can go out and be his witnesses. In Acts, just a few pages over, if you're in a paper Bible, 1:8, right before his ascension, Jesus says to them, the Father alone has the authority to set those dates and times. They are not for you to know, but you will receive power when the Holy Spirit comes upon you. And you will be my witnesses, telling people about me everywhere, in Jerusalem, throughout Judea, in Samaria, and to the ends of the earth. After saying this, he was taken up into a cloud while they were watching, and they could no longer see him. The last thing Jesus does is tell them that they're going to be witnesses, that they're going to be sent out. And actually, this Thursday on the church calendar is Ascension Day. I don't know if you knew that.
I didn't know that.
Mackenzie didn't grow up with church calendar, so this is all new to her. But we commemorate on Thursday when Jesus ascends, and this is the last thing he says. But what's interesting is he doesn't give a laundry list of things that the disciples are going to do in that moment. He simply says, you're going to be my witnesses. You're going to testify. You're going to witness to people what I have done. And what is he talking about here? He's talking about the way that he loved us, that he loved his people. And so in John 17, he's reflecting back again to this love. He's saying, people will know that you are my followers. You can prove it by the way you love one another. And when we're sent out into the world, if we love one another well, people are going to be compelled by what drives that. And so it's not like he's commissioning this perfect conversation or spiritual conversation. While I do think that proclamation piece is a big part of it, he's commissioning acts of love and care for one another. And out of that comes a love for everybody else, and they're inspired and drawn into that. And so that is my heart for us, is that we really get good at loving each other. It's really hard to be a church planner and not be able to talk to people outside of the church, right? I mean, when your growth, hopefully, is built on people far from Jesus outside of the church, it's really hard to build a church when you can't do that. I do think that's hard, and I struggle with that, and I worry. One of my deep anxieties for our community is that we become too inwardly focused, right? But I do, with that same worry, immediately accept and embrace this is not out of God's hands, what's going on right now. And God orchestrated this season for us, a season of preparation, so that we could really get good at loving each other and caring for each other. And if you're thinking about like our up, in, and out dynamic, Jesus is praying for this in relationship right now. He's asking for a perfect unity, he says in 23, at least the NLT version. He wants people to be one, this community to be one as the Trinity is one. He wants that kind of unity. And so this season really gives us time to practice that, to be that, to do that. And I've loved the way that you guys have come around each other already, and I've heard the stories of how you guys are doing that. I love Autumn and Sean, your willingness to be super, super vulnerable and just say, we were running from community and that was wrong. And I love hearing how the Holy Spirit is working to grow our community stronger and more unified together. And as we practice this will not only give us the strength we need to move forward and missionally engage people outside of the church, it will also be the example that when people see us, when we're doing our hangouts again, when there's Christians and non-Christians all in the same room, people will see us and think, man, I really want that. I want to experience that. And I hope that these prayers that you pray today and hopefully for the rest of the week will really drive and strengthen that part of our community, that we become a community that loves each other so well, we prove Jesus' love for those outside of the church. That's the heart of this message that I hope you guys really grasp onto in that. Because, as I said, there's this inward aspect of the strength in the community. You see this upward aspect. He says, Father, in verse 24, I want these whom you have given me to be with me where I am. Then they can see all the glory you gave me because you loved me even before the world began. And he's going on to talk about, after that in verse 26, then your love for me will be in them and I will be in them. He wants us to experience his love. We experience his love largely through other Christians. And so I want us to experience Jesus, that upward relationship. I want us to pray for that felt tangible love, that experience that we have with Jesus. So there's an upward aspect to our prayer as well, that we feel God's love, that we know God's love. And then obviously we see this outward dynamic in these prayers of he's mentioning, even though he says this prayer is not for the world, it's implied when he says that they will be sent, that when he prays, I'm praying not only for these disciples, but for all who will ever believe in me through their message. There's an implication in this that more and more will come into faith, and that's going to come through the hands and feet of his disciples. And so what I really hope for you guys, keep reading through this, take notes. Like I said, you can do this as a huddle, do this on your own study, dive into this prayer that Jesus prays to his Father. But I want to encourage you, because we are going to do this in breakouts, to pray this up in and out type prayer that we see in Jesus, where he's praying for this community to be unified and to love each other really well. He's praying this outward prayer that many more people will come to know him, as we see in here, but also in Acts 1 in the ascension before he goes. And we see this upward nature of this prayer where he's praying people experience that love from him, from God the Father, in me, they say, or in them. So I want you to do that now. You can hit pause and start praying right now, which would be great. You can wait a few minutes while I wrap this up and pray after that. But I want you to take that time to pray for our church this week, for our community. And you do that by praying for each other. And I want you to think about that threefold prayer that we just mentioned, that up in and out nature of this prayer, and try to include that in your prayers as we go forward. Because I want this team, this church, to be built on prayer and on Jesus's blessings and not our own efforts. So go ahead and pray if you want to pray now. Otherwise, we're going to kind of jump forward here. The one thing I want to talk about after this is what is happening going forward. What are we going to be doing for the next couple of weeks? And I was really excited to share these things in person, and I can't do that now. So we will get some emails that communicate that as well. But next week, we were going to do, we were planning on not meeting in person anyways, long before this quarantine. And the intention was a lot of these kind of big summer national holidays, people go away and they spend time with their family. A lot of times, and I've been in these circles, churches will lament how everybody's gone on 4th of July and Labor Day and Memorial Day, and usually, you know, especially when I was younger in ministry.
I was just going to tell him that story. I was going to say, funny story, like at our last church, when Mitch first joined the teaching team, they actually called him like the holiday preacher, because they would have him on Memorial Day, on Labor Day, on 4th of July, and it was funny because that's
all
actually,
the other pastors were going on vacation.
Yeah, and so, but it was quite fun, and so, yeah. So but they do lament about it.
So I never want to be the holiday preacher again. And so we're just not going to have holiday services.
Trauma.
No, I don't know if that'll always be. But my intention was, why is a church lament that people are out spending time with people outside of the church, or even inside of the church for that matter? We should celebrate that. We should encourage that. So my intentions all along, Memorial Day, 4th of July, Labor Day, we would not have church. And I'd encourage you guys to go spend time with people and really love on them. And of course, we keep trying to coach you into leading worship on your own as a family, as an individual. Do what you would typically do to engage in worship Jesus on a Sunday morning or Sunday evening or Saturday night or Friday night, whatever that is for you. But I want to encourage you this upcoming, were you going to say something?
Yeah, I was. One thing that I feel like maybe we need to articulate out loud, and it took, I think, me a while to get to the place where I kind of understood this, is I wanted to naturally just say, okay, well, what pastor do we want to listen to this week? And then Google it and watch them. And I think that's one thing that we actually want to tell you, like, don't do that. Like, try to go take a step farther outside of the box and think about, okay, what are some things that we could do that are really simplistic? Like, don't put a ton of time and energy into, but what are some worship practices as a family that we can do that maybe don't even take as long, but it becomes a little more meaningful, and that's how you're learning to worship as a family or worship individually, and it doesn't fall on just another church service. So that's what we're asking you to do, is take that step to say, okay, well, let's read this and we can pray about it. Or let's read this and ask each other, what is God saying to you and what are you going to do about it? And then from there, maybe you listen to a worship song, or maybe you sing one on a guitar, or maybe you're a family like ours that doesn't all have natural gifts and talents for worship. And instead, we sit around and we talk more, or we read together. But it can be something really simplistic, but don't default into just Googling your favorite church service. Try to take a different step, I guess. Sorry, go ahead.
Again, the heart of that is not to knock on other churches. We love other churches. No. The heart of that is we want to train and equip you to be self-leaders and to be able to feel confident leading worship for yourself, or to be able to not have outside resources and say, I know how to connect with Jesus today.
Yeah, you can still listen to those sermons if you want, but I'm just saying don't default.
So that Sunday, this upcoming Memorial Day weekend Sunday, sure, do whatever you would typically do to connect with Jesus. And we're not going to give you a lot of structure. We did a couple weeks ago. 2 weeks ago. Mm-hmm. That's a good way to go about it. Pick a spot in the Bible, read it, ask questions, talk, and then pray. And you can listen to music. That's cool. So we're not going to do that next week. What I want you to do, since the heart of it was to missionally engage, and we just read Jesus' heart, even though that prayer was for his people, Jesus' heart behind that was always to engage the kingdom. When he came back after his resurrection, before his ascension, it said that he continued to talk about the kingdom. He was all about the kingdom and it growing. And we don't want to forget that either. We're in kind of naturally been put in a very self-focused season of life for many people, not all people, but many people, because we're worried about our health, we're worried about our families, rightfully so. We've been doing that, and we can't be around a lot of people. So I wanted to make sure that we didn't lose track of that outward focus. So this upcoming weekend, we're going to send out basically a checklist of things, like we're calling it Operation Converge. And I'm going to give you a checklist. And for those who really like to be competitive. That's okay. This is good competition. But there's going to be a bunch of checklists of things you can do there. And they're going to be general enough where you can do them in a lot of different ways. So a little bit like a active scavenger hunt, maybe. We did that last week. But it can also be, we're going to give some examples of things you can do, but you can be really creative to how you could maybe do that or to who. But the whole goal of it is to really engage people outside of our kind of little world we've been living in lately, to remember those people that maybe we haven't talked to in a couple months because of everything going on. So we're going to get you all that information middle of this week, and basically it's going to be from when we send it to you, so probably Thursday night, so Friday through Monday, this Operation Converge to missionally engage people in our lives. And you might have to be creative with it if you can't go around people. And some of you, I know you're braving into that territory and you're seeing family a little bit more now. And I want to encourage you guys, do what you feel is where your moral convictions lie in this. We have a state mandate, and there are rules in that and that sort of thing. So make sure you do what you feel is what you're called to do in terms of your convictions. But also, I want to encourage you to start being creative and figure out, how do I engage people in new ways? Because regardless of if this thing lifts at the 28th, which I hope it does, the shelter-in-place order, people are going to be slow to re-engage back into kind of human contact and stuff like that. So we have to recognize that. And I want to encourage you to do that and be creative and do it in a way that fits who you are and your concerns. But I also want you to push you to actually do that and start re-engaging people. So if you're still nervous about it for health reasons, I totally understand. And maybe you do things that are more distant from people, or you leave them nice goodie bags or something like that. But
we'll give you suggestions in that midweek.
I want to encourage you to be creative and start dabbling in what does it look like to relationally engage. We are a church that's DNA is built on relationships and will be built. So how are we going to creatively engage relationships over this next Memorial Day weekend? And that will be the challenge. May 31st, like I said, the executive order, the shelter in place is set to end on May 28th. We're moving forward. We hope that's true. Other states are already lifting. But as we're learning from other states, they're not just going free for all. And most people are going to be nervous about it no matter what. So we are going to move forward May 31st and actually meet in person. But the catch is, we're going to do it in sensitive ways. So we're going to meet in groups of 10 or less, and we're going to do it outside. So we're going to have some host sites. Our house will be one. And we're going to encourage people to do a late afternoon, early evening worship experience simultaneously. We'll get you details on times and how we're going to do it. We'll even give you some structure, again, how to do that. Remember, we're trying to teach you how to feel more comfortable, more confident doing worship on your own without the direction of a church or a pastor telling you how to do it.
Does that mean we're going to have to sit around a campfire and sing?
You
I don't know if I want to do that.
If you have some talented people want to sing, that's good. The other thing is there is like a lot of science around this. If you're nervous about the spread of this, is that singing is like the worst thing you can do. So actually a lot of churches are being warned, don't go right back into singing.
The choir's
for these
not
reasons.
starting up right now.
Yeah, so you certainly can if that's what you decide you're comfortable with. If not, our family worship very rarely has music. A lot of times it's conversation, prayer, and reading scripture. Or sometimes we'll read a song and talk about it.
So maybe we could do that around a campfire with some s'mores?
Yes. Okay. So we will give you structure for that, so don't be afraid. So we were pushed you to do it a couple weeks ago as a family. Now we're taking a step further and pushing you to do it with other people. And so that can get you more nervous because part of the problem is we put these big lofty expectations and we think high production church service, and if I don't reach that, I failed. And that's quite frankly wrong. Any way of connecting with God and Jesus is worship.
So how do I find my people?
So we're going to actually have like an invitation, a form, a Google form, and you're going to fill that out, and we're going to try to connect you to maximize our group size and make sure we don't go over as well. And I don't want one group to have 2 people and be sad, and another group to have 14 people and not be as safe as they could be. And so we're going to set that up for you, and we're going to get that invitation out early this week. And so as soon as you get back that in, we can start pairing you up. And that invitation will read, we're giving you permission to say no to this if you're not ready. And you won't have permission to not meet simultaneously, but you may just choose to do it with your household, with your family. And we're going to ask you to take pictures, and I'm going to ask you to email them to me as well. But I want us to worship as a community, all different locations simultaneously, and we'll give you some direction how to do that. But we're going to have some details on what that's going to look like, but plan May 31st, late afternoon, early evening. We're going to be meeting together in person. And so that's exciting. We wanted to share that with you. We're about to wrap it up here, but I wanted to also encourage you. We have been starting to form some teams slowly. One of those a few weeks ago was for our huddles, a point team that kind of looked after the care and the health of our huddles, make sure we stayed on the right track. This week, our finance team assembled, which is really exciting. So Jake and Kim, you guys know they're finance gurus and have been obviously really involved with the bridge all along in that. But we've also added Ben Goodrow, Eric Bird, and John Ryan to that team, and our church plant residents are welcome to join and learn through that as well. So that's really exciting. But in lieu of that, in the spirit of that, I wanted to encourage you. I've been super thankful and encouraged as you guys continue to give generously, even when we're not meeting and figuring out ways to do that. But I want to encourage you, yes, we need to build a church. That's true, and that takes money. But it's not just to build a church. A big part of giving, actually the biggest part of giving is our hearts. And Jesus often talked about our hearts as it related to money. And really that giving is an act of worship. It's an act of relinquishing control to say, God, I trust, even when it doesn't make sense, that you're going to provide financially for this household. And so I want to encourage you to give. I want to encourage you, if you haven't started, to just start and to, just whatever that amount is, to do that and do that with joy. If you're already giving, I thank you for that and want to encourage you guys to keep going because we do have to figure out how to pay for a building and all that stuff along the way. So that's the nuts and bolts, but I want you to remember the spiritual purpose, the spiritual practice behind giving. I encourage you to do that online or mail that in to the bridge. But that's it for today. And we're thank you again for your patience. We are so excited when Zoom things end. We've appreciated that we can do this. It's good for us. But we're so glad for it to end soon and to start hanging out in person and reconnecting. So I love you guys. I miss you guys. And we hope you have a great Sunday and a great week.